Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome once again to How to Get Hired. I am Bill, the company's expert. Thank you for joining me today. This is episode number 134. Can you believe that? We've done 134 of these. So that either means we're doing something right or we're doing something really, really wrong and we just don't know it. It could be either. That's good. Welcome. This is an interactive live stream where I'm basically answering your questions. So if you can see my beautiful face at the moment, depending on what device you're watching this on or you're listening to this on, you should be able to see a chat box somewhere in the vicinity of my face, as always. So get into the chat box. If you are a subscriber to my channel for any amount of time, you should be able to get in there and ask me questions. What are you wondering? What are you struggling with? And I will do my best to help you out. That's the whole point. The title of today's episode is called "What is your current salary? Best answer." So we're going to kick things off by answering that. And as always, a shout out goes out to all my YouTube channel members. Membership has its privileges. You guys are awesome. Thank you. My Patreons, my super thanks donors, those are always nice to get. And to you, my viewers, thank you for being here. Okay. So just to kick things off, let's talk about the salary question. There's a couple of salary questions. This is one of them. Okay, the standard salary question when you go to a job interview or when you're answering this question on a website or on a form, the standard one is to say, what are your salary expectations, right? That's kind of the salary question, right? This one is similar to it, where they say, what's your current salary? Right? It's a very pointed question. And, this keeps coming up. We got a couple of things to cover. First of all, number one, before we go anywhere with this, I want to make sure everybody understands you are under no obligation to tell them what your previous salary was, or if you're currently employed, your current salary. Okay. You can if you want, but they don't have the right to that information. Right. And just as a blanket kind of thing, always remember that what you do with a third party is none of their business. Okay, everybody needs to understand that, right? So they can ask in the same way that, like, I could come up to you on the street and say, what's your credit card number, right? I suppose if you wanted to, you could voluntarily disclose that to me if you wish, but you're certainly under no obligation to give them what they're asking for. So everyone needs to know that before we even start with this question, right? Okay, that's what's going on here. They can ask all kinds of probing, sort of borderline inappropriate questions, asking for things like really personal stuff, really confidential things that, they don't have a right to, right? And the thing is that a lot of job interviewers, whether they're recruiters or hiring managers, they will ask these, and a lot of times they get the answer because people are unprepared for this. They're unprepared for being asked questions that are quite frankly crossing a line. And so, especially a lot of young people, a lot of people with less experience in job interviews, they'll just answer because they don't know what to do. They'll just and they just tell them. It's effective. That's why they do this. Okay. 68 WG Sanchez says, I see your face from Fort Worth, Texas. Right on, Fort Worth. And Frederick says, thank you for giving solid tips. And Joe, you're absolutely welcome, Frederick. And I hope to live up to your expectations today. Okay, so when they ask this question, so they say, what is your current salary? The other thing that's going on here is if you step back for a second and wonder, why are they asking this question? It's because they have no idea what you're worth. And that means what is a reasonable amount to pay you that you will feel satisfied with. Okay, they don't know that, right? And so a very quick and cheap way of finding out is to say, well, what did the last person pay you? Because they're making the assumption that, the last person that employed you was paying you your fair value, and you did stick around, and you're doing the same type of work for them as you're going to be doing for us, right? Like, these are all assumptions built into that. A lot of times those aren't true, right? So the problem is they're going on a series of assumptions here. And whatever number you say, if you answer this question and give them a number, they're going to say, okay, that's a reasonable amount of money that we should pay you, right? Like that's basically why they're asking this and where it's going. And the reason that they're asking this type of question is because it's bad for you, basically, because they're trying to make you an offer. They're going to make you an offer. They're going to make assumptions about you before they even get to the offer stage. And they're all bad for you. Okay, this is basically to outmaneuver you. If the conversation turns to compensation, like if it even goes there, if they decide they want to hire you, in which case they're going to seriously think about like what amount of money to pay you. If things do go in that direction, all the information they gathered by asking questions like this is going to be to your detriment. Okay, that's the idea. It's almost like playing a game of poker with somebody and them saying, okay, well, what cards do you have right there? You know, you need to tell me, I need to know what are your cards? Okay, I can't do my thing unless you tell me what are your cards, right? Like that's what they're basically doing, right? So if ever you have to play against them, you're screwed because you've given away like your advantage, right? So that's why they're asking that question. So they say, what is your current salary? Frederick says people are unprepared and honest. Yeah, exactly. They take advantage of this, right? The more it's about value and money, the more formal it gets. Yeah. Well, not necessarily, not always. A lot of times, yes, but not necessarily. That isn't like a general rule. It gets formal with people who think that it must get formal because they feel insecure in a way, right? That's what's going on. They feel unsure of themselves, and so they feel they have to do everything in a very formal kind of way, right? You can usually tell that a mile away. Anyway, okay. So basically the bottom line is that this question is not to your advantage. This question is only to their advantage. Therefore, you can regard this question as like a bad question, okay? So how should we respond to this? Well, long story short, you should not respond to it. Don't give them what they're fishing for. They're fishing for this to basically be justified in paying you a low amount of money, right? So without any further ado, this is what I say you should answer. If they say, what is your current salary? Your blanket response to that question should be something along the lines of saying, well, I actually have a personal policy of not revealing my compensation because there are confidentiality issues and privacy issues involved. I'm sure you understand, right? That should be your blanket answer. Basically, you're saying, no, I don't disclose that. Sorry. You know, now, I'm not suggesting you do this, but hypothetically, if you were to turn the question around and say, well, how much do you make? You know, do you expect them to say, oh, well, I make this? You know, I started here. I got a bump every year for the last 2 years, and now I'm here. Are you expecting them to say that to you? I would guess not. No, they wouldn't, right? Because it's personal, it's confidential, right? There are privacy issues. You know, so it's something you don't disclose, right? So that's the blanket way I would recommend everyone answer this question, okay? You know, now the thing is, usually when you go down to a job interview and they ask you questions, you're usually not expecting, not assuming that you're going to be sitting there saying, no, I refuse to answer your questions, right? Like that's usually kind of, you know, you're expecting the opposite. You're expecting like, you know, okay, this is a formal situation where you ask me questions and I answer them, right? So you come down there, just like Frederick says here, people come down and they're in a mindset of being honest, right? They're like, okay, I'm prepared to answer questions. So you ask me a question about this, you ask me a question of that, you ask me a question about what I'm making right now, you know, I answer, right? You're not down there to necessarily be combative, right? And obstructive. You're there to be cooperative, right? This is why a lot of interviewers have realized that they can get away with asking a lot of inappropriate things And people, a lot of times people will just answer with full and complete information, right? So the thing is, what we want is strategically what you want in a job interview or any kind of exchange is you want them to not know your value, not know how much money you've been satisfied with in the past. The least amount of information they have when it comes to that stuff, that's to your advantage, right? Because if you do get to the point in the interview process where they're thinking, wow, you're awesome, we want to hire you, right? We want them to have a high estimate of our value, and we want them to want to offer us a lot of money, right? That's the idea, okay? But this question, this gets in the way of that. If they know that, previously you were working for like this low amount of money, then they're going to offer you somewhere in there, maybe 5% more than that or something like that, right? If they don't know, you could be anywhere in this range, they're going to maybe start with something up here or something more in the middle of the range, right? That's what we want, okay? So in a nutshell, that's how I recommend you answer this question when they say, what's your current salary? You say, well, I actually have a personal policy of not disclosing my compensation because there are privacy and confidentiality issues. I'm sure you understand. Okay, that's how I would break it down. Because basically you're saying no, but you're giving a very polite, formal, professional no. And I recommend that as you're saying this, and you need to practice this if you're just starting out, like learning how to do job interviews, you need to practice this, maybe even in front of a mirror, saying it and looking pleasant, right? And saying, oh, well, I actually have a personal policy of not disclosing my compensation because, there are privacy and confidentiality issues involved. I'm sure you understand, right? You want to practice giving a pleasant answer, diffusing any awkwardness, right? And that way you win. You don't give them anything that's going to be detrimental to you, but you also don't create a ton of artificial awkwardness and things like this and kill the mood, kill the good vibe, and kill the good impression you're making during the interview. That's what I'd say. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's get back to you guys here. Syed says, hey, Bill, keep up the good work. Can you please tell what should be the appropriate answer to... Okay, so I just did that, so hopefully that makes sense. Has it always been like this? It has. It has, always, yes. Job interviews are going to be among the most artificial encounters you will ever experience in your entire life. If you haven't figured that out already, know that now. It's the most artificial exchange, right? All their questions are vetted, planned, rehearsed, written down, right? All your answers are vetted, rehearsed, planned, maybe even written down, right? It's the most artificial exchange ever. Okay, it's like the shortest thing of like sort of being in court. And they're coming with like all these questions, and their job is to basically peel back this facade of, you're presenting like an idealized version of yourself, right? Their job as interviewers is to peel that back and see who you really are. They're not just going to believe the hype about that you're the best person that ever lived, right? They're going to try and chip away at that and, try and find the cracks and go around the edges and see if they can reveal the person underneath. That's what they're trying to do. And we're trying to block that, right? So that's the beautiful little game of cat and mouse there that they've, the dog and pony show that job interviews are. 68 GW Sanchez says, I had a positive interview on Monday in an office with 4 other candidates. That's 4 other candidates. That seems kind of impersonal when they have like a bunch of candidates all in the room at the same time, like group interviews and stuff. I reviewed some of your previous posts. I had confidence of a lion. Okay. They never brought up the salary in this interview. Okay, good. Good. You're lucky because usually they do. Usually that is a thing. Now, maybe if there's other candidates there, maybe they're sensitive about bringing up stuff like that. And once again, remember, they're not entitled to that information, right? You know, for a start. You know, and if they're not bringing it up when there are other people, other candidates there, that might be revealing. Frederick says, do you know any company that has made it 180 degrees different? What do you mean exactly? That means not artificial questions or strategies. Oh, yeah. At higher levels, you know, you don't do any of this crap, right? Like if they're interviewing, like, for example, like for a vice president of a company or something, they don't sit them down and go, so tell me about yourself. It's like, you know, no one does this. The way they do it at that level generally is you have a series of free-flowing conversations with several people, and it goes on for a long time. Like, you have many of them, and each of them can be easily an hour and a half, you know? And the idea is that, you know, you move past stupid rehearsed crap like this into who the person actually is, like why they do the things they've done, what's their strategy, what's their worldview, like what's their attitude or their approach to doing various things. You get to understand who that person actually is, right? They may have like a reputation, a track record. That's the number one thing that is a reason why they're a contender. But then beyond that, when you talk to them, you try and get an idea of who they actually are, you know? And so a lot of these artificial guards and stuff tend to come down somewhat, you know? But for workers, this is the kind of stuff they do. And the reason they're doing this approach is because the way HR is evaluated, like recruitment and selection is evaluated, it's basically on efficiency metrics. Efficiency for the hiring process, not efficiency for finding good employees that last and that are productive. Because you can't really measure that. You can try, but the problem is if you have an employee that, say, doesn't work out, they leave in 6 months. Now, is that the fault of the recruiters that hired them and where they picked the wrong person? Or did they pick the right person and instead the fault lies with that person's boss who drove them away? You have no way of knowing this stuff, you know? And you can't trust what people say in exit interviews and stuff like that. You know, there's all kinds of, you know, fuzziness around that stuff. So as a result, they evaluate recruitment and selection on efficiency. You filled these positions. It took you 5 man hours on average to fill each position, you know, total. That's better than spending 10 man hours to fill each position, right? So therefore, the more stripped down we can do this, the better, right? It's stupid. It's ass backwards. You know, there's no thought really to, did you find an appropriate person? Did that person end up working out? Let's revisit this a year later. Now that we see who that person is that you hired, were they a good choice or not? They're not doing that kind of stuff. It's very hard to actually get proper data on stuff like that. It's very fuzzy. Yeah, so as a result, you got to put up with stupid crap like this. These silly questions where they're completely unoriginal. You were expecting them to ask this, and then you can find quite easily canned answers for a lot of these things, right? It's totally artificial, right? And that's why the process is always evolving, right? Because it's silly to begin with, so they're trying to come up with new things to try and outmaneuver each other, right? Anyway, there you go. So get in the chat. Let me know if you guys have questions on anything to do with hiring, job search, careers, any of that stuff, really. Anything to do with job searching, careers, for sure, or anything else you're wondering about. I will try to do my best to answer you. I got the feed here that I could see. Special thanks to Frederick and to 68WG Sanchez for asking some awesome questions and for sharing, right? Now, I just want to do something. I've been doing this a lot lately. Let's see if I can get this working here. Here we go. I like to do this just to kind of see. Now, if you were to ask ChatGPT this question, let's see what ChatGPT says, and I'm going to give you my take on it. Let's see here. Okay, so in a job interview, or even in a job application form, like on a website or anything like that, if they ask the question, what is your current salary? How do you recommend that people answer? Let's see what this thing says, and we'll talk about it. Sometimes ChatGPT is awesome for stuff, and it gets a lot of things right. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, well, there we go. There's a bug already. Let's try that again. Okay, so in a job interview or in a job application form, if they ask the question, what is your current salary? How do you recommend that people answer? There we go. Something didn't take there or whatever. Okay. So it claims like some places, it's illegal to ask that. Yeah, some places, but in the last time I checked, in the vast majority of places, it's not illegal. And even if it is illegal, sometimes people ask it anyway. You want to avoid anchoring too low. Okay, so it's basically advising you that you should say it. If you must answer on a form, yeah, okay, that's good. If it will accept text, usually it doesn't. You could say negotiable. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, if you're underpaid or overpaid, whatever. By the way, if they ask this on a form, let me just say, if they ask this on a form, okay, here's what I'd say. Usually, you can't put anything other than a number, a single number. You can't put a range. You can't write words, okay? So if that's the case, here's what I recommend. First of all, don't put 0, okay? Sometimes what happens is, you see, this is like a go, no-go test for your application. That's why they ask this question on a form, right? That's why they're pulling this question out specifically, because if you answer unfavorably, what they'll do is it'll terminate your application right there. So when you submit it, it doesn't even go on to the recruiter or anything. It just stops. Like you've been rejected automatically if you answer unfavorably to this question, right? So there's usually like a hurdle rate that's like a number. And if you answer, you say, I want higher than that, or I make higher than that, right? It sort of says, nope, reject it, right? It may not notify you of this, but that's what it's doing behind the scenes, right? Now, other times, there's a hurdle rate where anything above it is rejected, but there's also another hurdle rate. Anything below it is rejected on the basis that you're not giving a serious answer. So if you say like $1 or 0 or, something that's like way below minimum wage or something, it'll reject that and say, well, you're not answering in good faith. You're giving a deflection, or you're giving a non-serious answer, or you're lying. We don't know which. All we know is that doesn't make any sense, and that defeats the whole purpose of us even asking you this question, right? So I wouldn't put 0 or a silly low number. What I would do is I would look at the job description, and usually they don't tell you a lot of key things. For a start, they don't tell you if there's any benefits or what the benefits are, right? They're asking you how much money, do you want or do you make, right? But they're not like telling you, key things. Like, first of all, is it remote work? Is there mandatory overtime? Do you have to work holidays or not? What days off do you get every week? What is it, shift work? What is even the duties involved? What exactly you're going to be doing? There's a lot of key things that you don't know when you just look at the job posting. So imagine that all those things you don't know are all like best case scenario. Okay. Just imagine they give you like lavish benefits, many vacation days, many sick days every year. They give you a company car. They give you time off for like all holidays. You never have to work any holidays. You get first dibs on, what vacation you want throughout the year. Things like this. Imagine it's all best case scenario and then fill in the number, right? When it comes to salary. That's how I'd recommend you answer that. Okay, we got some stuff here. 68WG Sanchez says, if you are making a salary that you are actively interviewing for, would it justify why you are job searching by sharing your amount? So what you're saying is, if I understand it, you're saying like if you are making a low amount of money, would it make sense for you to say, I'm making a low amount of money, that's why I'm wanting to come and work here, or something? Is that what you're saying? If you're making a salary that you are actively interviewing for, would it justify why you are job searching? Okay, so if they've disclosed and they've said, we pay in this range, and you're currently working now and you're making a salary within that range, are you saying, like, will they be kind of confused as to why you're coming to work here if you're making the same amount of money that they're paying here or something? Is that the question? If that's the question, that I would say that doesn't apply, because people can change jobs for a variety of reasons, not just the amount of money you're making, right? Maybe you're making good money, but the job sucks. Your boss is a psychopath, your coworkers are bullies, the job duties are things that you have absolutely no interest in doing. There's no opportunities for advancement, and they're wanting to transfer you to Tajikistan next week. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not about the money, it's about other things, right? So that's why you're coming here. So if that's what you're asking, that's what I would say. Okay. So whichever way you slice it, as far as I'm concerned, you try not to answer this question. It's just that simple. When they ask you, what is your current salary, you just don't give it. You give a very professional, polite no that doesn't create a ton of awkwardness. If they ask you again, they say, yeah, we understand all that, but we still need you to tell us. What's your current compensation? It's very pointed. They're putting a lot of pressure on you, social pressure. What do you do then? Well, you repeat your answer with a smile on your face. You say, like, well, as I just sort of explained, unfortunately, I can't give you that because of my personal policy of not disclosing my compensation. There are confidentiality issues, there are privacy issues. These are very important. One needs to protect themselves. I'm sure you understand, and that's the only answer they're going to get out of you, right? And you deflect all the awkwardness because you're very cheery when you give this answer, and if they then choose to try and put the screws to you, it's like they're the ones that are ruining the mood and creating the awkwardness. It puts it back on them, and there's a lot of social pressure for them not to do that. Beautiful Story 88 says, is it encouraged to reveal current salary during phone screening stages done by recruiters when no guarantee for the next step interview? No, it's not. It's not. You see, what they're doing is they're making you think that you need to give them everything for them to move you forward, right? Like that's what they want you to believe. They want you to think that, oh, I better answer all of your questions truthfully and fully, or else I'm going to lose the job. They want you to think like this, right? Okay, that way you play right into their hand. They tell you nothing about the job, but that you disclose everything on the other hand, right? Now, when that occurs, you don't win, okay? You lose. That's how this works. So what you may end up with is that you stay in the running and then they offer you the job, and they offer you the job for like way lower than it makes sense for you to take, right? So, you know what I mean? Like if that's a win, then congratulations, you know what I mean? But it's bad for you, whichever way you slice it, to answer this question, right? Especially with a number, right? And when they're asking this question, they're asking for a number, not a range, a number, right? It's a very lazy way of trying to get a general idea of how much somebody's worth, right? And by worth, of course, I mean how much money they would accept and stay for. Sarthak says, I used to work for an expert network company who did not want to pay its expert. I quit the well-paid job because of that reason. Was I correct? I can't say. That's up to you. I don't know what the company is. I don't know what your situation is, nor do I know any of your goals or what you consider reasonable, so I can't say. Listen, whenever we make big changes in our lives, like you switch jobs, it's normal to kind of second guess yourself. It's to think like, oh, Am I really doing the right thing? Right? You know, and the other thing is that, not to like get philosophical, like to wax philosophical with people, but the reality is that as you go through life and like, you know, you get these big forks in the road, these big decisions, you never have full information. You never have complete information on all the options. That's just a part of it. You have to take a leap of faith to a degree, right? When we're younger, we tend to throw caution to the wind more and, you know, go for it. When we're a bit older, we tend to be a bit more conservative and wanting to play it safe a bit more, right? You know, those are the general tendencies. But whether you did the right thing or you were correct, that's entirely personal. What might be the correct thing for someone else to do in that situation might be different from the correct thing for you to do in that situation based on what your goals are and, you know, what your ambitions are and like that kind of stuff. You know, and the other thing is that after you've pulled the trigger on these decisions, it's impossible to go back and say, what if? Like, what if I'd stayed there? Would it have worked out? Would I have been better off today if I'd have not done that, not made that change, right? You can't even do that accurately, you know, because it's totally hypothetical. You never know what might have happened if you'd stayed, right? Maybe a month after you left or whatever, they fired the boss and they got a new boss in that department, you know, and that person was either wonderful or they were a nightmare, you know, you don't know, right? So don't beat yourself up about it, Sarthak, especially if this is like something that's over and done with, like you said, you already left, you know, don't beat yourself up, you know, life is long. There's a lot out there. I'm sure you're going to be fine. Yeah, so get in the chat. So this is basically a Q&A. There are 27 people here. Thank you for being here. You guys are awesome. If you are between jobs, if you are wanting to learn how to discover new jobs or put yourself up for new jobs and get them, if that's what your goal is, check out that course. Link in the description below this live stream. All my advice is there in one place, how to answer everything. And also how to get jobs, not just on the posted job market, but the hidden job market. That's the real gem, as far as I'm concerned. That'll open up so many doors for people who aren't tuned into this stuff. So yeah, keep the questions coming. I'm here just to answer your questions. We covered the salary question. What's your current salary? So let me know what you guys are curious about. In the meantime, let's get back to this. Right? So yeah. So this is where I would disagree with ChatGPT on a lot of this. I would not just answer, because then you're screwed when it comes to salary negotiation. You're never going to make like, you know, a reasonable amount of money when you disclose your past salary history fully. You know, that's the problem. That's the reason they ask this question. Because what they want is, just like when you go to the store and, you know, you want to get a good deal on whatever you're buying, right? It is good for you to know, like, okay, that same product, that's sold at these other 5 stores, right? Now, if I know what their selling price is in all these other places, right? Then, you know, it's better for me, right? It helps me to get that same product for cheap, right? That's kind of what's going on here. The more information they have on you, the more it enables them to get you for cheap, to get a good deal on you, right? So for a start, you will be able to buy that product at the lowest price that it's available, that you can possibly get it. If you know what its price is in all these different places, you just go to that store that's selling it for the lowest price and you buy it there, right? For a start, that's what you can do, right? So that's what these people are doing, right? If they know that, you know, you're currently working for this amount of money, they're not going to offer you this amount of money. They're going to offer you this amount of money, you know, to get you, right? But they're not going to overpay, right? That's the entire reason they're doing this. It's an extremely lazy way of trying to assess someone's value, and it really signals just how arbitrary salaries are. You know what I mean? It's based on your expectations. It's based on what you will stay for, not for, the amount of money in absolute terms that's worth a certain thing. It's the only thing that determines what salary is reasonable for what job is, if they pay it to you, will you stay, right? Let's see here. Okay, where were we? So we answered Sarthak's question here. What's this? Buddha Blaze says, my profile is not listed as seeking opportunities. Okay, well, I wouldn't worry too much about that. Buddha Blaze. Don't let it make you feel inferior in any way. Sarthak says, yes, it is impossible to get back. They are not interested anymore. Yeah, you know what? That's fine, Sarthak. Keep moving forward, okay? Even if you do regret your decision or whatever, even if you do, listen, don't sweat it, okay? Keep moving forward. There's plenty of things out there. It's just a matter of knowing where to look and how to get them, okay? You're absolutely welcome for my response. It's not a problem. Hopefully it's helpful. Today I was asked what do your parents think about relocation? Okay? Was this like in a job interview, you're saying? You were asked that? My response would be like, why do I look like I'm 12 years old or something? It's like my parents, Will I need a permission slip from my parents to work here? Alpi Pal says, hey, Bill, we were talking about AI last week and you mentioned that you already knew the answer and were testing the tool, but that's AI itself. If you don't know the answer more or less, you're walking into a trap, basically. Okay. I'm not sure I agree with that last part. I mean, I don't know. Look, I'm not a big AI expert. All I know is that I've been around the farm for quite a few years, and I've seen a lot of technologies come and go, and you can always tell truly disruptive things from things that are not disruptive. The thing that really has bugged me is in the last 10 years, people keep throwing the word disruptive around constantly. Like every new company that comes out describes their product as disruptive, right? Every boring, dusty, annoying, large enterprise who does a terrible job, basically, at doing what they do a lot of times, they always constantly describe their products as disruptive when it's the furthest thing from being disruptive, right? It's just boring, mundane, everyday stuff that doesn't really make much of an impact. But then we get AI, we get things like ChatGPT and all the other sort of copies of it that spring up. And now, for the first time in about 20 years, we have something that's like actually disruptive. And what happens? Everybody freaks out. Everybody, is like prophesying doom. This is the end of the world. There'll be no more jobs. There'll be no more anything. It's like, yeah, it's like, where's your tough talk now about boasting about disruption? It's what we want. It's the name of the game. It's like, yeah, now you've got disruption. How does it feel? And having had a career through several of these, this is what always happens. First, everybody ignores it. That'll never catch on. Then once it catches on and takes over, then everybody goes, oh my God, it's the end of the world. And then when it isn't the end of the world, everybody just accepts it and gets on with their life. It's just that simple. And they actually look back and they go, oh, I can't imagine living without that. Then they laugh at the people that lived and worked before that disruptive thing came along and go, those people were dinosaurs. Boomer, You know what I mean? It's the same pattern, right? It's like things shift. That's what change is. Everybody talks about change. This is what change looks like. It's not on your own terms. It happens to you, right? And then you are forced to readjust to it. That's the thing. So anyway, that's kind of for what it's worth. That's my take on it. I'm sure nobody cares, but there you go. So it's a tool. You use the tool. You know, the tool is somewhat useful, right? You know, but is it the be all end all? No. Does it replace people? No, it really doesn't. Like, not for the vast majority of things. You know, you ask it a lot of stuff. It gives you a generic answer. It gives you a basic generic answer for everything. And a lot of times the basic generic answer is okay. It serves your purpose. Other times it doesn't. You need something done properly. You need it to be good, not just acceptable, you know? Okay, so Alpipal says, or in other words, like you mentioned, it's a leap of faith, but it's super blindfold. Yeah, exactly. That's what life is. Life is like, you know, you gotta take a leap of faith many times. You don't always, like, we're in the age of like data-driven decisions, right? Now, I'm not knocking it. Okay, it's always best to be as informed as possible about what you're doing, right? Sometimes some decisions are extremely important. You need to get this right, and it could go very wrong if you jump into this and you don't know what the hell you're doing. So you get as much information as you possibly can, you know, and that's a good thing, but it's just not possible to get data on everything or good quality data on everything, you know? So you still need a brain. You can't switch off your brain and just go like, let's see what the data says. It's like, no, you still need a brain. You still need to fill in the blanks yourself, right? Alpipal says walking into a trap, basically. I don't understand what you mean by that. Sorry, Alpipal. Or I guess that's a continuation of the last thing. Okay, 68WG Sanchez says, the metaphor of how to assess reasonable pay makes total sense. Thanks for the analogy. You know, the other thing is that you look at, like, listen, you want to talk pay? Here's another aspect of it. You see, one thing I noticed, you know, back in a previous life when I had a corporate career, was that, for example, some organizations, they would place everything under an accountant, right? So they'd have some kind of CFO, and that CFO would usually, by law, they're required to be an accountant. You know, but the problem is everything that you place under a CFO, it was always regarded as a cost to be reduced, right? So everything was a cost. How you run your business is a cost. How you produce your product or your service is a cost to be reduced, right? Now, the problem with that thinking is that you can always do something cheaper. So what you normally get is you get the cost being reduced under such a person. Great. The problem is it sacrifices quality. It sacrifices customer satisfaction. It sacrifices sales opportunities. It sacrifices everything other than cost. So you get something crappy that's cheap. Way to go. And then it doesn't sell. And then everybody wonders what the hell went wrong, right? You see, and that's how they're regarding employees when they're asking this question. You're a cost to be reduced, right? Now, within reason, okay, instead of looking at, you know, things that are productive, like employees, like operations and whatever, you look at it as a strategic opportunity. You know, is this something that we need to just like reduce the cost, and that's how we run it? No. We're paying for this. Let's see if this can like allow us to take over the world. If this can like double our sales. If this can give us an advantage that no other company in our space has, you know? Instead of reducing its cost, let's see if we can take this thing and use it to really get ahead, right? So for example, if they're hiring an employee like you, okay? They could hire you for cheap and treat you like crap and have you be like this productive. Or they could pay you a little more, but that's not the issue. They could pay you a little more. They could treat you properly. They could give you opportunities. They could make you care about what you're doing, maybe reward you if you do a great job, and then see if you can be this productive, you know? Now, which approach does this employer take? It takes all kinds. Sometimes you get employers that see you as a cost to be reduced. They really don't care about how effective you are. They just want to get you for cheap. Other employers, they do the opposite. They're prepared to pay for you, but they try to make you very, very productive. And they try to encourage you to do it, right? Now, not everything is perfect. And the problem is a lot of employees do abuse the privilege sometimes when the company does want to try and take care of you and pay you well. You do get a lot of employees that they go, oh, they're paying me great here. Okay, here's my opportunity to sleep, right? And goof off. You do get a lot of abuse for that. That's the problem that caps it, But it depends on who's running it. If you have an accountant running things, everything's a cost. If you have anybody else almost, you have a marketing person or a salesperson, they tend to have a different view of things, Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Okay. Pearl says, hello, Bill. It's good to tune in again. Do you have any advice for a promotional/internal roles interview? Like just general advice? I don't know. I mean, other than the basic stuff, like just try and be as agreeable as possible. Try and outline what you can do for them. That like not super, super specific usually, because they might have plans of what they want that employee to do in that role. So you don't give a bunch of stuff that conflicts with what the role actually is, but just general kind of stuff. Talk about your skills, talk about your enthusiasm, talk about your ability to collaborate and to, communicate with people and all this kind of stuff. It's all about how much they like you. That's what it always boils down to. If you can get along with different types of people, that's like a real advantage. So I would show that off in the interview as much as possible. Frederick says group thinking. Okay, be smart, understand how the world operates, at the same time be your unique individual. Yeah, that's pretty general, Frederick. I don't disagree, but what does that actually mean? That's where we run into problems. WG Sanchez says, I feel like AI has pushed my resume to the bottom of the pile. I have recruiters readjust my resume for keywords and I got more hits as the previous. Yeah, listen. Okay, at the risk of you guys all knowing this already, I'm going to do this anyway. Again, I always feel like I got to do it. Okay? Right. Hopefully everybody knows this. See if you know this. Okay, so in terms of jobs, the amount of jobs that are posted that I could discover through Indeed or LinkedIn or ZipRecruiter or other such aggregators and websites, all those jobs that are posted, what percentage of jobs are those compared with all the jobs that actually exist, whether they're posted or not? That was not the greatest way of asking that question, but hopefully it makes sense. Thank you. Okay, so here we go. Now, maybe you know this, maybe you don't. I'm doing this so that people who don't know this kind of learn it. Okay? You've got the visible job market. Okay? You've got the hidden job market. Okay? Now, the visible job market, that's like publicly posted jobs. Those that you can find on big job boards, right? Company sites or aggregators, is only about 20 to 30% of all available jobs. It's actually like 15 to 20, but who's nitpicking over this? That means the majority of jobs are never advertised in a way that a job seeker can easily find. Did you know this? Okay, so you see all those jobs that you can see out there right now, okay? Like when you go to LinkedIn or Indeed or any of those company websites, anything you could discover online, that's like 20% of what's actually out there. There's many times more jobs than that are not posted. You can get them. They're up for grabs. You could get them. It's just that you can't discover them by doing like a Google search or something. You know what I mean? Okay? You have to access those jobs through different means. Okay? You don't access them by applying online to the company. Okay? Right? Why am I talking about this? I'm talking about this because 68WG Sanchez is talking about, I feel like AI has pushed my resume to the bottom of the pile. You feel like it's a losing game, right? This is just hopeless. Everything's stacked against me. It's an impossible challenge to try and, get noticed in, playing this game, right? The game is rigged. right? Well, what I'm trying to say is like, okay, that game that you're playing, okay, that's this game here. It's for posted jobs where people are applying online with resumes, going through recruiters, getting put through ATS, right? Like applicant tracking software that uses AI to rank your application against the applications of all the other candidates, right? All of that is for this, okay? The posted job market, right? The hidden job market, the one that where most jobs are, there's no recruiters, there's no ATS, there's no online applications, there's no like ranking of resumes. It's a completely different thing. Okay? Totally different game. Right? So you're not playing that game. So if this game feels rigged and hopeless, it's no big loss because you can play this game. Okay? Now, don't take my word for any of this. Like if this is like, it sounds too good to be true or whatever. Listen, go out and learn about this stuff. Don't listen to me. Listen to other sources. Go and do your own research, okay? Now, all I did was I just like asked ChatGPT. I said like, of all the jobs that are posted, what percentage of those are those from like all the actual jobs, the number of actual jobs? A much better way of phrasing the question would have said, what percentage of jobs are posted? That's what I should have said. But it's the same question. Okay, so like I'm just doing this with ChatGPT. So you're getting the answer not from me, but from it. Okay, you do that. Go and find articles. Go look at Google. And then when you've seen enough evidence that this is actually real, okay, learn about some of the basic methods of how you access the hidden job market. Okay, if you're an extrovert, great. There's things that really cater to you. If you're an introvert, great. There's things that really, really cater to you too, okay? Learn about these and then try some of them. You know how people tell you in school, they say, if you want a job, here's what you do. Go online, do a search for jobs, start applying to jobs, right? And you know how you apply for a job by sending in an application. The odds are that you're either not going to hear back or you're not going to get the job. Like, either it just goes into a void, you never hear back, or you get a rejection, right? The odds are is that that's what's going to happen when you apply to one job, your first job you've ever applied to online. The odds are stacked against you, right? So the same thing with the hidden job market. If you do direct outreach or whatever the methods that you're using, you do your first attempt, chances are it's not gonna they're not gonna respond and say you're hired. First shot out of the box, right? That's usually not what's going to happen. But if you persist with it, you'll find that you get a lot more bites than you would by looking in the posted job market. Okay, so this is the good news. It's the good news. Okay, you don't have to deal with ATS. You don't have to deal with recruiters. You don't have to deal with key phrases and keywords on your resume and all that. You don't have to play that game. Okay. So that's the good news. Now, if you want to learn that stuff with me, you could learn it there's a lot of options, but if you want to learn it with me, that's another reason to check out that course, because in that course, I put all my advice on how to go after the hidden job market and how to get all those jobs. So if you're interested in that, check out that course, link in the description. It includes a lot of stuff that I haven't put on my YouTube channel in free videos, because it's hard to talk about that stuff in little 5-minute bite-sized things, because it's a lot of principles and they're all stacked on top of each other. So anyway, Confidocene, how do I get a job as an investor? Well, if you're an investor, by definition, it's not a job. You're not working for someone. I mean, if you're talking about an actual job in a bank or something where you're doing finance essentially, and you're running a portfolio of stocks or bonds or other financial instruments, that's one thing. But if you want to work as an investor, actually investing your own money, that's not a job. And you don't need anyone's permission. You just go and do it, I mean, I don't care if you have $100 to your name or equivalent. You could start by being an investor. You probably won't make enough money to live off of at that low level, but you could be an investor. You don't need anyone's permission to do it, right? You just go ahead and do it. It's almost like being an entrepreneur or starting your own business. That's one of the beautiful things about it. You don't need anyone's permission. There's no gatekeepers. You just go ahead and do it. You don't need anyone's approval or permission, right? To go and do it. So if you know how to do it, there's absolutely nothing stopping you. And I do a live stream every Monday where we talk about entrepreneurship. It's actually more my core competency, like how to run companies and use them to make money and stuff. So, I encourage a lot of younger people to turn on to entrepreneurship and working for yourself because there's a lot of advantages to it. One of which is that you don't have to go through this crap to get someone's approval to make money. You know how to turn your value into cash directly without an intermediary like an employer doing it for you. Alpipal says, talk about overrated. The thing about AI too is that I don't like how it's superficial and that it's too robot-like. It's obvious nobody talks, writes, or overall functions that way. Okay, well, listen, you may be right. I'm not going to argue with you over AI. It does some things that are that are damn useful right now. But if your argument is that it's not perfect, I absolutely agree. They've got so far to go with it. And that's what a lot of the interesting work is going to be over the next 10, 20 years. It's going to be people improving it, right? So there will be opportunities to do that, right? So people are going to be working on this. IT, like development and coding and all that stuff, it's not going to go away. Far from it. It's going to thrive. The problem is that it's going to look quite a bit different from what it is now. Like all the little details are going to change, right? But and they already have started changing. But it's not going to go away. It's going to reemerge in a different form because there's a lot of work to do. You know what I'm saying? Now, yes, they will be using AI as a tool to help them do it, but they're going to need a ton of people also. So, anyway. This is how things go, right? And I mean, especially it goes so much faster also when people are making money doing it, right? And right now they're making money, a lot of money, So everything pushes to the fact that it's going to change and it's going to improve tremendously. The problem sometimes is where change comes too fast, right? That's what makes it disruptive. It's changing faster than people would complacently want it to. You know what I mean? That's what disruption is. We got some great questions so far. We've been talking about nearly everything under the sun. Get in the chat. There are 29 people here. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. And it's nice to see people getting something out of this. If I can help you with job search or careers or anything like that, or let me know. This is called How to Get Hired. So the obvious thing to talk about is stuff that furthers your career and gets you hired. So if anyone has any questions about that, get in the chat, ask them, and I will do my best to help you out. Oh, I'm thirsty today. And that's water, by the way. It may look like vodka, but it's not. It's water. Okay, we actually got a few things here. Let's see. Okay, DL, or Deal, if I'm saying that right, says, during recruiting, does having a degree from a European university differentiate me in any way from other candidates who got their degrees in a U.S. college? That's a great question. The answer is I have absolutely no idea. And even if I had an idea, it would probably be wrong because it's going to vary by industry and by location and by a bunch of other factors. So here's what you do, DL. Get on LinkedIn. Okay, hopefully you're already on LinkedIn, but if you're not, get on LinkedIn and do a people search. Okay, and you're going to enter in whatever degree you have. Okay, I don't know the specifics of your situation. Let's pretend that you had a degree from Oxford University in, I don't know, foreign languages. I have no idea. Okay. And you're wanting to work in a certain industry, let's say archiving. I have no idea, but fill in the blanks yourself. And you're wanting to get a job in New York. Okay. Right. So go on LinkedIn, do a people search, confine the geographic region to say New York City or whatever. Okay. And then in the search box, type whatever degree you're wondering about, or you're so if you say what was it, foreign languages degree, Oxford University, okay, type that in, confine the search to New York City, search, and then see all the individuals that pop up. And these are going to be people that are in New York City that either have a degree in foreign languages from Oxford University or are currently pursuing it. I don't know how you could pursue it if you're in New York and you're taking it from Oxford, maybe online. I have no idea. Okay. But these are the people that are popping up. Now, look at them one by one. Now, if they're all pumping gas and making donuts in the local donut shop, that kind of gives you an idea of, how valuable that degree is. You know what I'm saying? If they're all like vice presidents of large corporations, or they're all like entrepreneurs that own multi-million-dollar companies, that tells you something else. That tells you like, okay, that seems to be opening up a lot of doors for people, this degree, right? And then look at their profiles. Like as you're looking at these individuals, look at their career progression. So if they got that degree, and then you could see, okay, then they spent 10 years working in this role. They became a journalist, archivist, interpreter, whatever, and then that opened doors for them to work for diplomats. And next thing you know, they were ambassadors. And next thing you know, they're vice presidents in the private sector. I don't know, and you go, that's an interesting career path. Now, let's say you don't understand like how they managed to make a jump from, I can see how they maybe got a job as a interpreter, but how do you then go from that to being an ambassador? I have no idea. So you can then, if you want to, you can reach out to these people. You're looking at their profile. You could send them a message. You could connect with them, and you could say, hey, I would like to connect with you. I'd like to add you to my network or something. You could say, listen, I too, I noticed you have this degree from this university. I also noticed how you ended up in this role. I think that's absolutely fascinating. Would I be able to give you a quick call and ask you a few questions about your impressive career? Because I'm just starting out and I'm curious about your career path. Would it be okay if we had a phone call? Something like that. And you send that out to many people like this. A lot of them won't respond. Some people will say no, but some people will say yes. And next thing you know, you're talking right to the people that have got this degree that you're doing, that have done the thing that you're interested in doing, and they can explain how things work and what they did and why. I mean, that would probably be useful to you, right? So you can do all this from like just LinkedIn, okay? And then maybe a few phone calls. You can get that knowledge that maybe changes your entire career path and opens up all kinds of doors for you. Okay, so check that out. You may need the premium version of LinkedIn to do these kind of people searches. I'm not sure. If you do, they used to offer like a month free of the premium account. So you could sign up for that and then cancel before the end of the month. You don't have to pay anything, if that's a concern. But that's one way to get this information. Go to the people who know it specifically and do informational interviews with them. Like, call them up and say, how'd you do it? People find it very flattering when people say like, wow, I aspire to do what you did. Would I be able to talk to you and just ask you a few questions about your career and how you did things? A lot of people go, sure, yeah, I can talk to you. It's very flattering. So hopefully that helps DL. Alpipal says, he said inventor. I'm sorry. you can tell what I normally deal with, right? I deal with investors. I think of inventor. Well, invent something. Once again, you don't need anyone's permission or approval. You just go ahead and do it, right? A lot of entrepreneurship does that. That's where they say, like, we're going to develop this new technology. It's going to take some research. It's going to take a little bit of money, maybe a couple extra people, right? So step into that world. Pearl says, during a conversation with my line manager on complaints that I'm not doing enough, I argued that I do my very best, and he said other people also think I am not doing enough. Okay. Or that maybe my work is not visible. Please, what is your viewpoint? How do I handle future conversations with my line manager? How do I become more visible? Okay, so here's what I would say for, like, just as a general rule when talking to people like this, especially if you're trying to understand where they're coming from. What I would do is I would approach the person, make sure that, it's a good time for them to talk. They're not like stressed out. They're not like in the middle of 20 things, So maybe go to them, like could be at the end of the day or on a break, or what I always use, if you could pick any time, I've said this before, what I would pick is immediately after lunch break on a Friday. That's usually when people are in their best mood. The weekend is coming, you've just had some food, you've just relaxed for a little bit, you're feeling pretty good, So go to them then, my productivity or whatever the issue is. From my perspective, it really seems like I'm doing quite a lot, but I would like to understand more of where you're coming from. Like, what things are you paying attention to? What things do you see? What things are important to you? That kind of stuff. If you could help me understand, right? And then, like, you're listening. You listen to them. You don't interrupt. You don't but, and then argue back about it. You just let them talk. They say, listen, here's what I care about. I care about this, this, and this. Anything else that you do, okay? It's not that it's bad. It's just that it's not really a priority for me. I care more about those 4 things. Those are the things that I really care about, And then hopefully what comes out of this is you get their perspective, and it's quite different from yours. You see that all the extra work you're doing, all the things you take pride in, that you think are very good things that you do, you see the other person saying, like, I'm not even seeing those. I'm not even looking at those. That's not what I am in charge of enforcing. That's not, how I get evaluated, right? I get evaluated based on how many units you work on, or this department works on. That's how I get judged. So therefore, I care about how many units each of my workers, in my team produces. That's the only thing that I really care about. I don't care about how clean you keep your area. I don't care about how you organize your inventory and your tools and all, or whatever, right? So knowing this, you go, okay, that's what you care about. That's what you're paying attention to. And then you could say something like, okay, well, listen, thank you. Now that I know kind of that you're paying attention to those things specifically, okay, I'm going to try and put more of my effort into those. And hopefully you'll see that I'm as productive as anybody else. And hopefully there shouldn't be any more concerns. How does that sound? Something like that. Okay, so you just basically get their perspective on things, and then you let them talk, and then you just listen. And whatever your response is, I don't care if they say totally ridiculous things, you're going to have a good response. You're going to say, okay, thank you for letting me know. Now that I know that, it really changes things for me. And, hopefully we can, you'll see that I'm just as productive as anyone else. Something like that. Okay, that's how I would approach it, like without knowing any of the specifics. That's what I'd do. Alpipal says, under the sun, nice pun. Yeah. No, it looks like water. Now, the Alpipal, this was inventor. Yeah, okay. Okay, where did this... This jumped on me again. God, where was I here? Okay, LPPEL, I wasn't arguing that AI isn't perfect. I was just commenting that just like computer playing chess, it's much harder to understand and it looks very boring and confusing sometimes. I'm not judging. It's all good, LPPEL. Don't worry about it. We're all, I certainly am not an authority on AI, so, my opinion is very amateur. What I think doesn't matter. What you think is equally valid. Tong says, do you think it's fair to use a contact from 5 years ago when I was a student, a senior in my field, said I could message him anytime in the future? It was obviously just a polite thing to say. Is it okay to use his contact regarding jobs? Yes, sure. Listen, that's not the most important factor here. The most important factor is how you approach them. So I don't care if you're best friends with this person, and I don't care if they don't have a clue who you are when you approach them. What matters is that you approach them, in a very effective, diplomatic way. Okay, so learn about that. Now, just at the risk of totally delaying things here, I want to get you started here. This is how I would start off here. Okay, so there is so when it comes to reaching out to a contact, say a business contact to help you get a job or to get information or anything like that, if this is a person that you haven't had any contact with for 5 years and you want to approach them, what do you advise is the best way to do it? Would you use the sort of 3-step way to reach out to a contact, or would you do something else? Let's see what ChatGPT says about this. Okay. Right. So is it doing, it's basically giving you the 3-step thing. Okay. And there. So it's basically a variant of the 3-step things. So number 1, so hopefully you know about this. You could look this stuff up yourself. Okay. If you're not using tools like this, I'm doing this intentionally to make you aware that these things are useful when it comes to stuff like this. Okay. So the warm reconnect, basically, remind them who you are, reestablish a friendly tone, show genuine interest in them, right? The standard thing is to say, I see you're still at that place. How's it going? Stuff like that, right? That's it. You're not talking about yourself. You're not saying, can you do this for me? You're like, hey, what's up? How is it going over at that company you work for, Okay, something like that. How have you been? How's your father? That kind of thing. Give them a bit of a, how's your father? Number 2, light engagement before the ask. Okay, so you don't just talk about a bunch of trivia, but you don't just go right to can you get me this? Right? It's just a bit abrupt, right? I saw you at that place. Looks like an exciting place to be. What's it been like working there? So I like that these AI tools, they give you sort of a starting point. Now, a lot of these are kind of pretty generic, pretty basic. But it's a starting point if you've never done any of this, okay? And then finally you go and ask for the thing that you're wanting, right? By the way, I'm doing this and I was wondering if, you could do that for me, that kind of thing. Okay? So that's kind of always been the template for stuff like this. It's a 3-step thing, right? Reach out. Don't just immediately say could you get me a job? Or whatever it is. That sort of stuff. So what really is going to depend on it's the quality of how you do this, how personable you are, how much they want to respond to you, how persuasive you are, and that kind of thing. So learn about that stuff, and a great starting point if you have no clue is to follow the basic guide from tools like ChatGPT if you've never done it before. But yeah, 5 years is fine, right? And sometimes people forget you after 2 months. Sometimes people remember you 25 years later. You know what I mean? There's really no rhyme or reason. So, hey, they said it. They said you could contact them. So yeah, go for it. Just do a very good job of reaching out. Zeros says, is there any nuance behind this question? What are you currently doing? Well, right now I'm adjusting my belt. that kind of thing. I'm doing a bunch of other things that you might not want to know about. No, all kidding aside, yeah, that's a loaded question, right? Like, why would someone ask that? They've obviously got like a specific kind of thing that they're probing for. So for context, I'm a recent graduate and haven't been successful any job in the past 7 months. Okay. First of all, Zeros, you're awesome. Okay. And you're not alone. There are many new graduates that are struggling to find a position after 7 months. Okay. So there's nothing weird about you. There's nothing bad about you. That's okay. Right. However, one thing, I don't know if this applies to you, and I don't know if you've noticed this, but God, camera is bright. The sun keeps going away and then it keeps coming back. Just, yes, I'm adjusting my brightness like a totally tech savvy with it type person. Anyway, okay, the thing I've noticed over the years is that when you're in school, they do a terrible job of explaining how you can get a job. A lot of that derives from the fact that they honestly don't know, right? They don't know how the world works. So they teach you like, oh, this is how you do job applications and stuff for posted jobs. Now, we covered earlier in this live stream, I'm not sure if you're here for it, we covered how all the jobs that you see posted, that's something like only 20% of all the jobs that are actually out there that you could get. Okay, you're just seeing a tiny subset of them, right? The way you apply for and get posted jobs is you go to websites, you send in applications, you do job interviews with recruiters, all that kind of stuff. That's how you get posted jobs. The other jobs, the other 80% of jobs that are out there, they're on something called the hidden job market. There's tremendous advantages in going after those jobs because, number one, there's substantially less competition for them, number one. And number two, they tend to be much better jobs, much more desirable jobs. You see, the reason why those jobs are not posted in the first place is because they don't need to post them. Because the moment that the person who originated the job, created it, the moment they mention it to even like their coworkers and, maybe members of their team or whatever, people are coming to them and saying, hey, I got a brother or a cousin or a friend or a former coworker. They'll be perfect for that. It's a desirable job. They don't have to then advertise to get strangers to apply for it because they've already got several people that want it, right? So most jobs, they stop searching at that point. They don't need to search for any more candidates. They're already getting personal recommendations from people that they trust, to fill that job, right? So why would you say no to all those and instead canvass total strangers that you don't know? These people could be axe murderers. These people could be lying about every single thing on their resume. You have no idea. Why would you step over these people to get to those people? You know what I mean? But imagine if, your message or something landed right in the lap of the hiring manager when they first realize, like, okay, I need to hire another person. We've got 10 people in my work group. We need 12. We have too much work to do. So I got to hire 2 more people. Imagine if at that moment your message landed in their lap. They got an email or they got a message, a DM from you saying, hey, I'm here. I solved this problem. And if ever you're looking for someone who can do that, let me know. I know about your company. I'd love to work for you guys. And I live pretty close by. Imagine if that landed right at that moment, right? They'd be like, hey, maybe we'll check out this person first. And if they work out, I don't have to do anything further. We just fill the job and get on with our lives, So that's what the hidden job market is like, right? So it's about like reaching out to people through various ways. If you're an extrovert, you could do this in person. If you're an introvert, you can do this online. But it's about like contacting those people proactively, right? Okay. So you have a couple of choices here. You can keep looking for jobs in the posted job market, which is what you've been doing, and maybe refining some of your techniques. Okay. Learning about how to rewrite your resume for every job you apply to, include keywords, key phrases, all that kind of stuff, right? Okay, get better at interviewing with recruiters and things like this. You know, some people do that successfully. Alternatively, you can learn about the hidden job market and explore some of the techniques you use to get hired there. I have some stuff on my channel. Other people are talking about it too. Recruiters tend not to talk about it because that process usually doesn't involve recruiters. So it's kind of a conflict of interest for them to tell you that you don't need to deal with recruiters to get a job. You know, that's what I've noticed. So there's a few options there for you, but learn all you can about this stuff. If you want to do some of that with me, okay, a starting point for me is like I've got YouTube videos that are free, but I put all my advice into that course. If you want to check that out and you want to do that, if that's the kind of thing you're into, I encourage you to do that, you know, and go from there. But one way or another, tune into how people actually get jobs in the real world. It isn't just as simple as looking for posted jobs online and then doing job interviews where they ask you asinine questions like, you know, tell me about yourself and, you know, why do you want to work here? And, you know, stuff like that. Okay, where did this jumped on me again. Sorry, I'm looking at the feed and it keeps like, every once in a while it'll just go like that. So I got to get back to where I was here. Let's see. Okay, so I answered Tong's question. Is it okay to use contact regarding jobs? Yes. Zeros, right? So that was Zeros. So hopefully that helps. Alpipal, it's just annoying and sometimes overrated. Sure, it will improve over time, but it may be hard to use if I don't have a computer. That's how these things always work, right? I mean, look at the internet. You know, like, look at the internet in 1988. You know, that's what AI is like right now. Okay, it's starting to be a thing that, you know, you don't need to have like a PhD in computer science to use. We've gotten past that point, but it's still far from user friendly, you know, for most everyday Joes, right? You know, we're getting there. We're almost there, but it's not quite there. Sarthak says, I'm pursuing for a US IT recruiter and Indian job market. How can I access the hidden jobs in general? Please suggest how to approach my job search. Well, I just kind of did that. I've got a course. Now, I do have some free stuff on my YouTube channel. If you go to my page, like the company's expert, like my actual YouTube channel, right? And you go to the home tab, the main page, it has a couple of playlists, and one of those is called, I can't remember, it's called How to Access the Hidden Job Market or something like that. So just watch that playlist. That'll be a good sort of intro. I did those videos like years ago, and they're very basic and short, but that's a starting point. So you could try that. Alpipal, deviating from AI, there are a lot of advices on YouTube, maybe books, college, but you become independent of those when you understand what you're doing and you have truly gained strength. Yeah, you got to start somewhere. The problem is like things like YouTube. You know, people. I talked about this recently. People like you know how you used to have newspapers, right? And newspapers would have headlines. And what sells newspapers is sensationalism. You act like something is the end of the world, you know, and then all of a sudden lots of papers sell, right? Well, hello. Social networking has amplified that, and that's what you get on places like YouTube today. You look at YouTube and like everything is a panic. Everything is like the big, you know, the end of the world, right? It's not the end of the world, you know? It's just that they're inflating it and they're sensationalizing everything to make it seem like it's the end of the world so that they'll get clicks. It's just that simple, you know? So therefore it becomes very hard to like do honest learning on things like YouTube, because there's so many people that are like acting like everything is the end of the world. You know, you must do this or else it'll be the end of the world. You know, everybody clicks, right? You know, so it can be a real hindrance to actual learning, because the reality is far more mundane. It's not the end of the world. You know, a lot of things are pretty boring, actually. They're the same old, right? You know, for a lot of things. Yeah, there's change, but most things are the way they've been for a long time. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it makes it hard to like take things at face value, especially if you're on social media or things like YouTube. Frederick says, I don't think he can change the manager's criticism. Okay. I'm not sure what that is in reference to. Alpipal, so whether you get career coaching, freelancing, whatever, sometimes advices or notions can be very misleading. If broken down like ground chewed food, it becomes too easy to accomplish. The hardest. You need to be wary, Alpipal, of generalizing things this much. Okay, yes, there's some things absolutely, like what you're describing, absolutely, you're accurate. But if you then generalize that to everything, you'll find that it's wrong a lot of the times. There are things that don't behave like this, you know? So you gotta just be wary of, you know, seeing one thing and then generalizing it everywhere. You know, you get a little bit of everything, right? Like I just was bad-mouthing YouTube a moment ago, right? And I stand by that. That's a lot of stuff you see is like that. But it doesn't mean that everything is like that. No, I'd like to think I'm not like that for a start. But I know there's like other gems and stuff on YouTube that are really, really helpful, you know? So the point is you would want to search through the crap to find the gems, right? Don't just like look and then see a bunch of crap and then just like believe it all. You know what I mean? That's the point I'm trying to make. It does help when you have a guide. Now, if you mention having a career coach, usually career coaches are good because if nothing else, they're on your side. You're paying them to be on your side, to be in your court. It's like going to court and having a defense attorney with you, your lawyer, right? They are there in your court to champion you and to help you, right? You know, you pay for them, but that's why you pay them, because they, you know, assist you and they bring a lot of expertise and they advise you, you know. Can you get bad career coaches? Yes, but I'm assuming that, you know, most of them know what they're talking about. You know, a lot of like former recruiters and stuff are career coaches. I'm not a career coach. I don't do that. But you can hire career coaches that, you know, can help you, right? They're really good for interviewing, for example, or telling you how to like write your resume or whatever, because they're helping you to get round recruiters, right? So if that's what you're looking for, I wouldn't necessarily lump career coaches in with like the crap, you know, if that's what you're doing. Coach Oba says, don't forget, Bill, you're awesome. I am awesome. Thank you, Coach Oba. And so are you. Frederick says, saying hopefully, what? TP? The manager is a polite way of handling the situation with the manager. Saying hopefully. Okay. Alpipal says, accomplish the hardest things, but it's hard to find that, yeah, that's a no-brainer. I'm taking this deal, opportunity, or task which discourages people. Okay, well, I don't want to get into that kind of stuff. Like, listen, there's a lot of crap out there, but, you know, dwelling on it and generalizing it is not really the right way to handle it, in my opinion. Frederick says, you bet a company would use references of success that are 5 years old or more. Yeah. You can contact someone after 5 years. It's not like inappropriate or something, you know? You know, you could even do it 35 years later, you know, under some circumstances. With suitably low expectations, but it still wouldn't be something that you should not try, you know? Tong says, okay, thank you. Is it best to try and schedule some kind of coffee or go to their office or a Zoom call? You could do any or all, right? If you see, the thing is, people don't have lunch with people they don't know. That's usually the general rule. But you can persuade someone to have a coffee or equivalent with you, if it's appropriate, meaning that, like, you know, this is something at a higher level that deserves its own face-to-face meeting. You know, there's a bunch of extra stuff to it. Like, for example, if you're doing this on LinkedIn and you're reaching out cold, the first thing the other person is going to do when they get a message from you is they're going to go to your profile. They're going to see, who is this person, right? Now, if there's a bunch of questionable stuff on your profile, it's probably going to be a deal breaker. They're going to be like, no, they're not going to respond or something. For example, like having a bunch of unprofessional things on there or not having anything on there. So you're like obfuscating yourself. That's a problem. Or, like if you do work in sales, this is unfair to you, but having a bunch of stuff about sales all over your profile, that's going to be a turnoff. They'll just assume, oh, you're trying to sell me something, So there's a bunch of things that, you have to be aware of. I cover all that stuff in like that course. But, you can ask people, like informational interviews are based on that, right? And you approach people in a proper way and everything's above board and stuff. You have a very legitimate request, but at the same time, they're not 100% sure what it's about. And so that convinces them they should give it a chance, right? If you can do it that way. Like I've done a ton of those. I've done all of them with, not all of them, but like 95% of them with CEOs and owners. So, they don't know exactly what the implications of this could be. There could be other things. So they check it out, a lot of times. But obviously that's not what you're doing. So, but I would push for an interview if it makes sense. Is if you're in the same town, if you're in the same city or whatever, you could be close by. It's like, a great place to do that stuff is like at a Starbucks or equivalent. You meet on sort of neutral turf and, it's professional and this kind of thing. Anyway. Frederick says, but like, some other times, obviously like a phone call might be more appropriate because it's just convenient, right? If you're asking somebody about their career, you could do both, right? If you're asking someone ultimately, like you're trying to find a job, I would do it in person if you possibly can. Frederick says, nowadays I use people's forgetfulness to handle everyday tasks. Okay. Their forgetfulness opens up for me being a little less serious at work. Okay. I know it sounds manipulative and wrong. Remember, though, it's forgetful people above me demanding me to this and that. Okay. Helicopter, I've arrived. Hello, I've arrived. I'm here. Sound the trumpets. Fire the cannons. Everything that you've been talking about, you can just forget it. I'm here now. That's awesome. Make an entrance. You know what I'm saying? Sarthak says, thank you. Well, if that's to me, you're welcome. Guy Incognito says, kind of a big choice to pay someone to help you when you're struggling to get work. Yeah, it is. It's kind of also a big choice to pay a lawyer when someone is, to help you when someone is suing you in court, right? Same idea. But you do want to win. You want to get a job. And if these people can help you, sometimes it makes sense. And obviously the devil's in the details. How much money are we talking about here? Like, for example, a lot of people will do, and like, look, I'm not a career coach myself. I'm not necessarily trying to promote for career coaches, but I know a lot of people will do like one session with a career coach. They'll say like, look, I need to work on my interviewing. So the career coach will say, okay, well, like sign up for 1 hour, pay me for 1 hour. And what we can do is we'll do a mock interview. Like I will pretend to interview you. You treat it like it's a real interview. Let's see how you interview. And then afterwards, I will give you some feedback. Here's what I honestly think. Here's some advice. This is what I would say. That was a bad answer. Say this instead. That was a bad answer. Say that instead. Also, your body language is wrong. You're doing this. You should be doing this other thing. When you say this, it's coming across like this. I don't think that's the way you mean it. Instead, try this technique. Try doing, whatever. Try smiling as you say it or something and not looking so, constipated and uncomfortable, whatever, right? Like whatever they do in career coaching sessions, right? Where they coach you. And like just for 1 hour, whatever that costs, that might be worth it. If every job interview that you do from this point onwards you don't make this fatal mistake that you've been making so far, maybe it's worth it, you know? A lot of people obviously agree that it is because they keep hiring career coaches. Guy Incognito, kind of a big choice, yeah. Well, there you go. There are 24 people here. Thank you for being here. I'm going to wind this down. If anyone has any last minute questions, ask them now. I'll be signing off in a couple minutes. I will be back actually in less than half an hour on this channel. I have another live stream booked for starting in like 25 minutes. So we're going to be back. It's going to be an episode of Honest HR Nitrous. That's the live stream I do where we talk about the gritty reality of job search and how it tends to go. Not the theory behind how it should go, but how it ends up actually going in reality. So you could join me for that. In the meantime, check out my courses. This is the one I think more people would be interested in here. All my advice in one place: how to get a job in the post-job market, how to get a job in the hidden job market. And if anyone is interested, this is probably something that some people will want to check out. That's to learn professional communication skills, above average stuff. Everything that I learned in terms of communication skills in my journey from going from a supervisor when I started out to a CEO when I ended my corporate career, everything I learned about communication skills I put into that course. So if that's what you're interested in learning, check that out. There's a link in the description box below. If you want to learn business and be more valuable as an employee, check out that. And I've made videos describing each of these courses that are also linked below. So in an effort to be as transparent as possible, it explains the course, what it is, what it does, what you get out of it, how it works, all that kind of stuff. So all that stuff is linked below in the description box for this live stream. Check that out. I will be back in half an hour. Thank you to everybody who participated. You guys are awesome. And I'll hope to see you again in about half an hour. Everybody take care. See you soon.